Good evening. We are live here on my first ever Facebook Live. I think we decided to call it, and I'm looking at two different cameras, so if that's a little bit weird, I apologize. But I think we decided to call it the Growth Hour with Chantal. So thank you to my friends who helped me pick that name out. And I've decided that just for the sake of it, because I love to share my knowledge and I get lots of people asking me questions lots of time. Isn't that so cliche? Like people say that all the time. Oh yeah, so many people asked me in my DM, so I'm going to share this here. But this is actually a real thing. I do get asked to share this knowledge and this information quite often. Just going to move this here a little bit because people know that I have a background in finance and accounting, and I have started and run my own business, as well as helping a lot of other business owners along the way. And hello, Nadine. Thank you for joining. So it's going to turn into a weekly. I kind of set this up on Facebook, which is where I'm streaming this, but then I'm doing a second streaming on Instagram. So if you're on Instagram and I'm not looking at you like this, it's because I'm looking at my camera on Facebook. They don't have those worked out yet. If you know of a way I can do that, please let me know. Hello, Jason. Oh, Nadine, thank you for, I think that's a hug. Nice to see you, and I hope you're doing well. And I also know you've got your own little business rocking there, so hopefully something I share with you tonight might be useful. So thank you for joining, whether you're catching me live or you're watching on the replay somewhere. Maybe I'll put it on YouTube. I don't know. But if you know me, you know that I am super passionate about helping other entrepreneurs. I hear ideas and I instantly have like a million thoughts going through my mind about how to turn that idea into a business, how to make money out of it, how to help other people succeed. So my very first live, I just wanted to kind of get on here and kind of just share a little bit about the process, share about some things that people have misconceptions about when they're starting their business. Very broadly, like areas that I see people maybe making the wrong decisions where they could be making better decisions. And hopefully by the end of this, whether you have a clear path forward on how you want to launch or maybe make some changes in your business, or maybe you are just going to get inspired, which would also be incredible. So one of the places I want to start on this, and it's something that comes up often when I have people ask me about, launching a business, whether it's going to be a full-time income or a part-time income, or they have no clue. But they often ask me like, but I'm not ready. Or they say, I'm not ready. Like, how do I get ready? Like, how do I make sure that I know that now is the time? They often get stuck. They're held back because they're waiting for perfection. They're waiting for everything to line up. They're waiting for everything to be perfect. And I saw a sign once at an event I went to, and it said, the P in perfection stands for poison. Perfection is poisonous. There is no such thing as perfection. So let me give you an analogy about that. This cat is not Mr. Perfection tonight. Think of perfection like a horizon. And you're in a boat, or you're in the water, and you're swimming, or you're boating, or you're paddling, whatever. Maybe you're on a stand-up paddleboard. That seems to be a famous thing these days. But you're in the water, or you're on the water, and you're trying to get to the sunset. Can you ever get to the sunset? If you can, I want to find out how you did it, because the reality of it is you can't. It's constantly moving, right? So that the further out you go, the more the sun moves, the more that the sunset moves, and you can never get there. So that is the same concept as perfection. So how do I like to frame it? I say, let's aim for excellence. What's excellence? Think of excellence as the next marker in the water. So maybe it's like a little island, or maybe it's a lighthouse, or maybe it's another boat. We're going to get there. We're going to get there all in one piece, safely, happily, That's excellence. We can never actually get to the sunset. We can never get to perfection. So that's one thing that holds people back. Another thing that holds people back is thinking that they need a huge budget. Now, okay, depending on what kind of business you're planning on opening, it may be huge, it may not be huge. Huge is a function of like, what are you comparing it to? $1 million could be a huge number, it could be a small number. It all depends on what you're looking at. So a lot of people, they just don't understand the numbers. And so they allow that to stop them from actually taking action and moving forward in the process of investigating whether or not this can truly work. A lot of people are looking at leaving a job, perhaps giving up some form of income, or just throwing themselves into a state of uncertainty. So thinking that you need a huge budget, but also not understanding, not understanding your numbers, those two things together can create a lot of catastrophes. They can also stop a lot of people from actually moving to the next step of evaluating whether or not your business plan or idea is actually valid. Last but not least, and I see this a lot, I think the saying goes, if you think hiring a novice is expensive, wait until you have to hire an expert to clean up the mess of the novice. So I see this a lot with people when they are setting up their legal and accounting. And yes, I understand not all businesses need a ton of legal and accounting right out of the gates, but depending on what province you live in or what country you live in, I know Nadine, you're here in BC, but there are some very simple parts of the process that you really should go and get some advice from. And when I say go get some advice, like invest the few $100s on a person who has that expertise. Do not ask your mother's brother's sister's husband's next friend, next door's boyfriend's dog. And I know that kind of sounds silly, but the number of times that I see people relying on this kind of information from someone who's not an expert, it absolutely boggles me. And it is also part of the reason that I want to do these Facebook Lives, because I want to start providing some value to people. And I want them not to feel afraid about not knowing maybe where to go or what to ask or who to go to. So the next thing I'm going to do, I'm just actually looking at my notes here, is I want to break down the step-by-step process of taking your idea into reality. So the very first thing you need to do is validate the idea. Sounds pretty simple. You need to ask yourself a couple of key questions, such as, is there a demand? Who is the customer? And what are some simple ways of testing that before you go out and invest a bunch of money? I can tell you that, I'm just gonna scroll here. I can tell you that when I opened Cloud9 Boutique, or at the time it was Cloud9 Nail Bar, we knew that there was a demand. We also knew typically who our customer was. There wasn't a whole lot of questioning that we had to do there. But what we did need to do is we needed to validate part of like, where was the demand coming from and what part of the market of the customers did we actually want to attract. So step number one, validate your idea. I suspect that the majority of people who come up with a business idea, they've come up with it because they have identified a demand without even realizing that they did, and they have identified who the customer is. And by customer, we might get into this in a little bit more detail, but you literally have to have like a customer avatar. So you need to know who is that one person that you're speaking to. You need to know where they live, what they eat, what they drive, what time they go to bed, when they wake up, who their friends are, where they work, like all those things. So that is one of the first parts of validating your idea. The second thing is, and this probably is the most important thing, even though it's coming second, is creating a simple business model. So how are you going to make your money? What are your products and what are the services that you're going to offer? And then you really need to keep it really, 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 really simple. What's its cost? And what do you need to sell? It's that simple. So create a very, very, very simple business model. You can use a pen and a paper. If you're good at Excel, you could probably get into Excel. but you need to create that very, very, very simple business model so that you have a little bit of an idea on where you're going. Next, we talked about some of the legal implications of opening a business. So step number 3 would be making sure that you're setting up the right structure. Are you going to do this as a sole proprietorship? Are you going to do this as an incorporated entity? And there are way too many things that need to be taken into account when you make that decision. I cannot cover them all right here on this call. We may do a call on just that topic at some point in the future, but those are some of the simple things that you need to think about. Sole proprietorship or incorporation. If you're going to incorporate, there's a lot of steps that you need to take. It can cost as little as $400, as much as $1,100. I would recommend, if you've never done it before, that you go and you use a lawyer to help you with that process. And then you really should start doing some of the simple things like opening a bank account, because you want to start separating the expenses of the business from your personal expenses. And then also getting a very simple bookkeeping system. This is another thing that I find a lot of people put off. And then they come to the end of their year, and yes, I'm speaking from the lens of an accountant right now, but they get to the end of the year, or they get to some point where they all of a sudden have to file some sort of tax returns or financial statements or something, and it is a mess. And this is one of those things, like if you are not in the business of being an accountant and being a bookkeeper, you need to give this over to someone else. Okay? You drive your car to the mechanic to get an oil change. You go to a manicurist to get a manicure. You go to the dentist to properly clean your teeth. For some reason, and I don't know why, but people seem to think that bookkeeping is just this thing that anyone can do. And yeah, a lot of people can do it, but they can also do it really, really wrong. And it can cause you all kinds of problems later down the process of your business. So step number 3, decide whether or not you want to be a sole proprietor or if you want to be incorporated. There are a lot of things to consider. And like I said, probably do a live just on that one day. Open a business bank account so that you can immediately start separating your business from your personal, because you want to make sure there is that distinction. And then just get a basic bookkeeping system. So QuickBooks is an easy one. There are a lot of people out there that can help with that. Alternatively, like my son, he runs his own business, and he actually tracked, before he got QuickBooks, he actually tracked everything in Excel. A lot of banks allow you to download things right from Excel. You've got copies of receipts. You can kind of key them in there, but you need to start tracking that stuff. Step number 4, and this is the part that a lot of, I'm going to say, female entrepreneurs really get stuck on when I say you need to know your numbers. And the number of times I've heard them say, no, like my husband does that or someone else does that. I don't need to know my numbers. I have someone else that can do that for me. The number of times I hear that, just, it makes me actually cringe. And then the next thing it's followed up with is, yeah, I'm really bad at math. And what I love to tell people and share with them about my background. So yes, I am a chartered accountant, a CPA here in Canada. By virtue of the fact I'm an accountant, you probably think I'm really good at math. I am really good at math now. So there was a time in my life where I really sucked. I actually failed grade 11 math. And the second time I did grade 11 math, I got about, I think, 58%. I think you needed 58% to pass. And I remember telling my math teacher, I don't ever need math. Math is the stupidest subject ever. I'm never, ever, ever going to need math. So just what do I need to get so that I can graduate and get out of high school? And I will tell you that at the age of 21, going to Camosun College in Victoria and deciding that I wanted to go down the route of a business degree, I realized I needed math. And so I had to take grade 11 math and grade 12 math, and I took calculus, and I called up my high school and I talked to my guidance counselor, who actually remembered me and remembered that conversation. And I told them they were right. I really did need math. And strangely enough, I was going at it from a completely different perspective. It was now something I wanted to do, and it was a lot easier. Was it easy? No, but it was a lot easier. And I find that the same can be true for you if you are an entrepreneur. And math isn't your strong suit. You can learn to love it in a way that will support your business. So you need to know your numbers. You need to have revenue goals. You need to understand what your expenses are, and then you need to know your cash flows. It's a very basic thing. A lot of accountants make this sound very, very, very confusing, but it's no different than the finances in your own household. So you've got your money coming in, you've got your payments going out, and you have what's left over at the end of the day. Very, very basic. We don't need to get into a whole bunch of accounting theory on that, but you need to know what are you going to have coming in, what's it going to cost to deliver that, and what's going to be left over at the end of the day. Okay, step number 5. And I can honestly tell you that in most of the businesses I've gone and done consulting in, it doesn't really matter what the business is. It doesn't matter what they do or what they sell or where they are. Every single business I have been in, the people have been the cornerstone of that business's success. So what that also means, the flip side of that, the other side of that same coin, is that the people can also be the demise of that business. So building the right team, if you know that you're going to need a team, whether that's one other person or 10 other people, you have to build the right team. And you need to understand that you simply cannot, and you shouldn't, do everything in your business. And I'm going to give you a very real example here. When I was deciding to launch Cloud9 Nail Bar, I'm an accountant. I work as a CFO. I've worked as a CEO. I've taught. I've done everything in my life almost other than like nails, painting nails, doing facials. I can barely even do my own hair, and I'm sure my makeup could be a million times better. And I had every single person that had an opinion about this saying like, who are you and what do you think you're doing opening a nail bar? You don't even know how to do nails. And my response to them was, and that will be the reason I succeed. And the reason for that is because I knew that in order for that business to be successful, I needed to hire experts. And I knew right from the day one, I needed to make a decision. And the decision I needed to make was, am I going to work on the business or am I going to work in the business? And in this particular case, because doing nails or facial treatments or whatever is not my area of expertise, I knew where my place was. I knew that I was going to be working on the business. So I was going to be doing the books. I was going to be doing the marketing. I was going to be doing the administrative stuff. I was going to be doing the hiring and all those things. And as a result of that, I was forced when there wasn't enough people to work, I was forced to go out and find them and not what we call it like get behind the chair, which a lot of people in that industry end up doing, and they end up burning out because they don't value, and this I'm generalizing here, so pardon me for that, and this isn't just that industry, it's many industries, any kind of trades or anything, they don't value the idea that they need to hire experts in their business. So they end up spending all day doing the trade or the job, and then they end up spending all night doing everything else that has to get done to keep that business going. And what ends up happening is they end up burning out. They end up dropping the ball on those things. GST starts piling up, payroll stuff doesn't get done. Like I could give you a million examples. So you really need to know that you need to build the right team. And if you're just a one-man show, and sorry, my cat continues to just terrorize my poor dog. If you are a one-man show and you are the only person, well, then the right team becomes those advisors behind the scenes, right? So maybe they are not employees in your company, but they are people who are advisors and people who bring an expertise to you. You need to understand in terms of hiring the right team, when you have to hire a bookkeeper and maybe a person that might be called a CFO, or a virtual assistant, there are just a ton of services out there right now that offer, very good pricing. They have really great expertise. A ton of companies have just basically stood up an entire business model around, a small business owner who only needs the expertise of these people like 2 or 3 hours a month or 10 hours a month. So definitely building the right team is very, very, very important. When we don't have the right team around us, it makes it very, very, very difficult to get to where we're going. So I've shared quite a few stories about my path already. The one that I like to share about the most is the Cloud9 one because it's a very tangible, visible. People saw me working in that business. And when I look back, I've been out of that business since 2022. And I look back and I think about some of the things that worked and some of the things that didn't work. I would say that what worked was not being afraid to take risks, not being afraid to come up with new ideas for the industry, for the business. Probably what didn't work is this is going to sound weird to say, but I was almost too invested. So I didn't know when to step back and when to take breaks. And so I probably did on a number of occasions, reach some burnout. So I would say that is a really, really, really tangible lesson for anyone who's considering going down this route. It's one thing when you're an employee and you've got vacation that you need to take, and there's kind of an expectation that you take it. The minute that you put on this entrepreneurial hat, it's very, very, very easy for that to become your entire life. You're 24/7, you're not taking holidays, work becomes everything. So I definitely would say that a very important thing that you could do is to prioritize your well-being, prioritize time off, prioritize having some boundaries between work and not. And again, like circling back to the piece about the people, when you've got the right team around you, you're able to kind of step back and take those moments. I would also say another thing that worked really, really well for me personally as an entrepreneur. It wasn't necessarily something that we did within the business, but working with a business coach. So I always, throughout the last 10 to 15 years, I have had a business coach. I've had different people at different times for different reasons. But again, going back to people and team, I've always had that person who was, a coach. Sort of in my life and a place where I could go to share ideas, to share frustrations, to get some feedback. So having a coach, I think, is really, really important. And then the other thing I think that is really, really critical, especially if you end up sort of in an echo chamber of the industry that your business is in. And as an accountant, this happens a lot of times. Like you need to get out of your comfort zone. So for example, if you are in an industry that is, I don't know, I'm like in accounting. If I only ever go to conferences that are about accounting, well, that's all I'm going to ever really know about. So for me personally, like I put myself out there. I went to conferences in the United States. I went to conferences about all sorts of different things that then I was able to take that information and distill it back to something usable and tangible that I could apply in my business or in my life. And as a result of that, I ended up meeting some really amazing mentors and some amazing people that just encouraged me and really made being in business for myself all that more exciting. What are some action items that you could, if you're thinking about going and starting your business? So number one, we'll step back to the beginning, validate the idea. So get out a book, get out a pen and paper, sit somewhere quietly, be very, very clear about what your business idea is. Ask yourself the question, is there demand? Who's my customer? And what ways can I test that this is an actual viable business that I might want to run? I'll tell you an example of my son. So my son wants to offer photography courses to I guess, novice or hobbyist photographers. So he's busy right now collating all this material. And what he's going to do is he's then going to offer that course free to beta testers whose obligation, because they're getting the materials and his time for free, the obligation will be that they provide feedback and they help him sort of create create a package that the average person, not average person, but a person like them, a consumer like them would want to actually buy. So there's a lot of different ways that you can actually validate your idea. Next, you need to create a very simple business model. I'm not even talking yet about a business plan. You got to start with a very, very simple business model. Like, how are you going to make money? What product or service are you offering? And then just keep that very, very simple. You will need a business plan at some point, especially if you're going to go out and look for financing. Probably will do a Facebook Live on that at some point. But for now, just keep it simple. It's a very, very, very simple business model. Then you need to just think about what is the structure that you're going to need for this business. Sole proprietor? Is it a corporation? If you're starting to invest money to get this business open, get your own bank accounts for it, keep your personal stuff separate, and put in a very simple tracking methodology so that you can keep track of that. And then once you get going, you need to know your numbers. You need to know what are your revenue goals? What are the expenses? Obviously, a lot of people going down this road, they're replacing maybe a paycheck with this entrepreneurial venture. So you really got to make sure that you've got those numbers dialed in and that you've got a way of managing them. Last is, building the right team of people around you, whether that's a team of employees or whether that's a team of advisors. You have to make sure that you've got the right people around you. And please, please, please do not be afraid to spend money on this, but do make sure that you validate that the person that you're hiring has the expertise that they say they do. I'm not sure that I have much more to say. This has been almost 30 minutes so far. I would love if anyone wants a little bit of advice, or what they say about free advice, it's worth what you pay for it. But I'm always open to a quick conversation with someone if they want to bounce an idea off of me, or if they want a referral for some sort of service provider. Simply send me a DM. I'd love to hear from you. And also, I'd love some feedback on this session and whether or not you thought there was some value in it. And of course, send me any kind of questions that you might have. Thanks for joining.